Hello, everybody, and welcome to a week in Sado. A week of stuff where I'm going to be talking about some stuff that I care about personally. This is obviously not representative of everybody at LivePixel, just representative of me and some of the stuff that I actually care about this week, as well as some other stuff that we just kind of shelve into this thing. So I've got some notes up. I got some stuff prepared. I didn't receive any emails or questions from last week, but again, I'll sort of remind everybody, if you want to submit some questions, comments, etc., anything, feel free to submit them to either Sado at thelivepixel.com, or you can submit them as comments on either YouTube or as well as that on our website under the comment section of the last video that we actually did. So if this video comes out and you want to talk and submit some questions for the next week, you will actually put it in this video, or if you want something to appear in the next video, etc. On and on and on. Just prior one, kind of submit stuff there, and then we answer it, hopefully, right? I didn't receive anything, obviously, like I said, so I don't have any questions right up off of the bat to answer. But with that, I have a bunch of stuff that's prepared, so we'll get into some of that stuff right now. So some of the stuff last week was pretty huge for LivePixel and myself in general. We've been sort of pushing a lot of new content this last week. So a lot of my time was taken up by, pushing up some content, getting some stuff done. Not really a lot of time invested in LivePixel, but still, considerable amount. So we're actually in the process of preparing a lot of new content for LivePixel, and with that, we've actually been doing some good work when it comes to views and getting people actually interested in the site. We've got some nice traffic so far out of it. Obviously, it's just the first couple months, first couple weeks into it. So we're hoping it's obviously going to improve over time, and that we'll, eventually get to a point where, we maybe possibly throw some ads on YouTube and make a little bit of money off of it, so that we can then invest some of that money into stuff like video editing software, because as of right now, all of LivePixel's production, video productions, and all that stuff is all being done with open source software or stuff that's free. So with that means that I'm sitting there in Windows Movie Maker and constantly editing it to try to get a video that's worth something out of Movie Maker, which is, if anybody's used Windows Movie Maker or Windows Live Movie Maker, both of those are terrible options for video editing, and I would not suggest anybody seriously get into editing with those. But, if you have nothing else, it certainly is, I guess, a good option. Definitely better than nothing. So yeah, we're just trying to, obviously at some point get some money up, invest some money into software and other things like that to make the site, continue to go and flourish. With that, we actually have a couple new followers on Twitch, which we appreciate every single follower that we get on Twitch. I don't know if we're going to be doing a rollout of every single person who's followed us. We might do a name call or roll call of everybody who subscribes to us, and we give them a free plug because they followed us. Maybe, I don't know. Still trying to think about things. But overall, traffic is up, and we expect good traffic for next week, which, by the way, next week is going to be technically our real unveiling of what we're doing here. So if you're interested about what LivePixel is going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, look, to Monday and then beyond. We're actually in the process of, we scheduled out all the content for this last week. We did a bunch of quick looks and looks at games, previews of games, all that stuff, including a bunch of streaming content, which has all been, already tossed up to the site. We've made a little post about it on the weekend. Actually, we're still working on the weekend. So yeah, we posted out that post, and you can kind of see where we're sort of headed with the live stream stuff. And then on top of that, all the quick look stuff should be coming up along with it throughout the week. We have, I think, a better pipeline and a better understanding about how to get that stuff on to our YouTube account now. So with that being the case, we can kind of schedule a lot of this stuff. We actually ended up getting a lot of that functionality this last week from YouTube. So we can now schedule up with the videos, work that stuff, pre the postings, and then with WordPress and then also TweetDeck and the rest of those, social media plugins, we can really do a lot more than we currently were doing beforehand. So We're going to have a ton of content coming up throughout the week. We're hoping that, you guys enjoy it. Let your friends know if you enjoy it as well. We just are trying to get as many eyeballs on our content as possible. But we're committed to continuing to get a lot of content out at a reasonable pace. So with that, expect a lot coming out in the next coming weeks. And, other shows and other stuff like that, more live stream content is on the way. By the way, we're in the process of talking with a couple people to be doing some more broadcasting. So hopefully, we'll see more broadcasters come up and more people around the clock streaming games. And then on top of that, stuff that we don't really want to say too much about yet, but we're really excited about it and we can't wait for it to go live. But we're waiting on something, and some content's going to be coming up that we're really, really excited about. So I think that piece of content will be good once this thing happens. And, hopefully it does, because we've got a lot of riding on that content. We spent a lot of our time this last week. You may have noticed that we kind of stalled on content on the site. And that was partially because we were preparing some stuff behind the scenes that we're waiting on certain things to happen for. So when that happens, and once we get to a point where we can actually start talking more about that, we will. And you'll obviously be seeing a little bit about that. But we obviously weren't just sitting here and doing nothing. We were producing content in the background for something that's coming up, and we're really excited to talk more about it, and we will once we're able to. But beyond that, that's a little tease for Live Pixel. Some other stuff that I've been doing, shows coming up this week for myself that you can catch me on if you're interested. Game Breaker TV has their podcast and show that I'm on a weekly basis for Star Wars: The Old Republic. In that, also, if you are interested in Star Wars: The Old Republic, you can go on over to darthhater.com and visit there for all of our content throughout the week. I still continue to do that and still working just as hard as I have been on that site. So, along with Sleeper as well. So if you're interested, check us out there. If you're looking for Star Wars content, if you're not, then this is great, because Live Pixel is not about Tor. And I'll sort of remind people, because again, it's the second week. Don't expect me to talk about Star Wars: The Old Republic. I will not talk about it at all. You will never hear me really mention it, except for if I'm talking about shows that I'm on or something eventful that happened that absolutely needs me to talk about it. But beyond that, we won't really discuss it at all. So yeah, that's it pretty much. So stuff on my radar this week. A lot of this stuff is coming out this week, or there's some stuff hopefully coming out this week that we're really excited about. The reason why we have some of this stuff on our schedule or on our radar currently is because it's currently either coming out this week or there's a lot of hype surrounding it. So with that, the Loadout beta, I don't know if you guys have heard of Loadout. It's from a company here locally in Austin, Texas. And they're making basically this FPS with creativity behind it, where you can sort of make and mod your own sort of weapons, make them to your preference style, your gameplay style. I got a chance to check it out at RTX briefly. And as far as from what I saw, it seemed really cool. I'm really excited about actually maybe getting my hands on it sometime soon, and maybe hopefully talking about it, in the future. But, right now they have a beta currently going on, and you can sign up for it at, I believe, loadout.com is the site. If not, then just Google it. I'm sure you'll find it there, but I'm pretty sure it's loadout.com. But yeah, from Edge of Reality here locally in Texas. So it's got a lot of hometown pride here in Austin. So we're kind of excited to see what comes out of that and see if it's any good. Obviously, once we get to a point where we can actually stream it, we will stream it. I don't know if we're going to get selected for the beta because we have to wait like everybody else. So in that, unless there's an Edge of Reality developer out there that wants to toss us a beta key, then it'll just have to wait until whenever we get access to the beta, the open beta, or what have you. It's currently in closed beta, so they're not really inviting a lot of people in currently, so it's kind of hard to get into. But yeah, definitely interesting to see. It's an interesting game, interesting type of approach to a first-person shooter. not like something that you have seen ever, really. You'll understand what I mean with that. I mean, like you could like attach like rocket launchers that, you know, detach and go into MIRVs, and you know, machine guns that also electrify people at the same time, and some really interesting aspects of that game that a lot of FPS don't, and they're like all based on attachable and detachable barrels and sights and scopes and all that stuff. There's so much more customization in the guns in this game than any other game that I've ever seen before, as far as like an FPS is concerned. So there's a lot to it. I'm not really sure if it's a free-to-play game. I could do some research on that, but yeah, I think it is a free-to-play game. Could be wrong. But it's very much in this sort of vein of, if you know Super Monday Night Combat or something like that, its art style is pretty similar to that. However, it's not a MOBA game. It's a traditional FPS, so it's got deathmatch, CTF, all that stuff. So I'm kind of excited to see how it actually works and plays. And also, you know, another plus for the game, for me, for somebody who likes like really fast-paced movement games, Loadout is definitely one of those where you can do dodge jumps, you can do rolls, etc. So stuff like that, you know, for people who were fans of UT, you know, Loadout seems to be providing some of those things for that. So really interested to see it. I'm excited to actually be able to check it out, hopefully soon. With my limited play session at RTX, all I got to do was just play around with the weapon combinations. I didn't really actually get to play against other players, because that would have taken a much longer time. The line was pretty huge at RTX consistently. It got a lot of traffic, actually. I think it was by far, except for like the Halo stations, the Halo 4 stations, it was by far the one that, you know, had the most people, you know, around the booth at RTX. So looks like people, you know, like it, and I'm excited to actually get hands on it soon. Orcs Must Die by Robot Entertainment is also coming out this next week. I believe maybe by the time that this video comes out, it might actually be out. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I've been a huge fan of Orcs Must Die since it first came out, quite some time ago actually. And it's actually, if you're interested in checking out the first one, it's I believe reduced price on Steam. You can actually purchase it for a reduced price from what it originally was. I believe it's less than $5 currently. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, check Steam for what it currently is. But yeah, they reduced the price, and you know, there's been a lot of people who've been playing it as of recently. We streamed a little bit of it actually on our stream, so if you're interested in checking out more about it, you can also check out our stream. We have a bunch of archives up, and we actually have a full hour of gameplay footage from Orcs Must Die. You know, RPG, you know, tower defense game, you know, similar to something like a MOBA type game, except for without the other players, the other heroes. You're kind of like the single hero that's building, you know, towers along the way. You know, as a tower defense game, along with the ability for you to be able to shoot and use your abilities and everything else. So it's a lot more, and you know, shooter centric than a lot of other MOBA type, or I should say tower defense games. So it's very different from a lot of other games out there. I mean, there really haven't been very many that have actually done that. I believe there was one other one, and that was on Steam. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a sci-fi MMO, or sci-fi tower defense game, which was, God, I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, I believe there was one other one recently that did something similar to this. But yeah, it's a type of game that you don't really see very often. So I would certainly suggest you check it out. You know, possibly get Orcs Must Die 2 when it comes out this next week, because it's going to be obviously one of the bigger games to hit this summer season, with the drought of games that's currently going on. If you're familiar with gaming at all, you know that there's not really much coming out. So the limited stuff that actually does come out, you're kind of usually looking at indie games. So if you want, I mean, I kind of more highly suggest you check out Orcs Must Die, you know, if you're gonna look at something to get for this drought season of games. Yeah. Also with that, Awesomenauts is also coming out this week for the PC. So if you were interested on that, for the console, it certainly is a great game to check out. With my limited time playing it, you know, on the consoles, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good game. It's a MOBA game, so it's like Dota, pretty much. You know, control a hero, kill some creeps, kill other players. You know, that's pretty much it. Kill some towers, etc. So not really much to that game, really. I mean, it's kind of scaled down. There's not really a lot to say about it, except that it's a Dota game. It's pretty neat. The powers are nice. The sort of concept around it, and also the art style, I think, is awesome. I think the art style is maybe the best thing about that game, and without actually seeing images or video, I don't really think I can describe it the way that I think I should. So check that out. It's coming out this week for the PC. I think it's a great option for also players, people who are interested in picking up something during this game drought season that we're currently at. As far as from what I'm seeing on the new release calendar, I think the next game that comes out that is a big hit or a big one, from a major publisher. The next one is Darksiders 2, and that doesn't come out for another month-ish, I think. So I think if you're waiting for that, or if you're waiting for another game, you're gonna be waiting for quite some time. So I would say maybe start thinking about some indie games. So I certainly am going to be playing Awesomenauts, also Orcs Must Die this week. So maybe we'll see some more of that this week going forward. We'll stream some of it if we can. Also, I'm in the process of finally seeing Dark Knight Rises. I'll be checking some of that out. That movie coming soon. Obviously, everybody's kind of tried to spoil it for me as much as possible these last weeks, especially with Facebook. Facebook has not been the thing to watch this last week when trying to avoid any sort of coverage for Dark Knight Rises. So I'm gonna get a chance to go and actually finally see it. Hopefully this next weekend. I didn't get any time this weekend because I was too busy working on other stuff, other projects. So yeah, I'll hopefully be checking that out. I'm really excited to see it. I don't know if you've seen it. Let me know your sort of general impressions on it. Don't obviously please don't spoil, but people are going to spoil it anyways. But just let me know what you actually thought of it, because it's getting, I don't know if I'd call them mediocre reviews. It's getting, they're mostly good, let's say, from the critics, but at the same time, it seems like it's getting slammed in certain sectors for what look like genuine reasons. So in that realm, I'm not really all that excited to see it. And actually, that was probably the reason why I haven't seen it yet, is because A, it wasn't getting all that great ratings initially, and then B, at the same time, it's like I got a billion other things on my plate at the moment. So I'm really busy, and I don't really want to sit there and try to play the game of which night is the non-sellout night to see this movie. So I'm just going to go maybe midweek, maybe a Wednesday or something, or Thursday, and just go and see it, with nobody in the theater. So that I can actually enjoy it for once. Because going to the theater in this day and age with the people who text and chat and answer their phones during movies is the biggest annoyance to me. I don't want to bother with it at all. so yeah, I finally seeing it. I'm hoping it's good. Bane looks like an interesting character. I think he looks like he's been done right by Nolan. So I'm excited to actually see it. It's a little disappointing though that obviously Nolan isn't going to be doing any more of the Dark Knight movies, the Batman movies. So in that realm, I'm kind of sad to see that this is going to be technically the end of what we consider modern Batman. And then I kind of wonder where it's going from here, because I don't want to see a return to Batman Returns. So yeah, let's not do that, because as soon as Batman becomes a more comic booky Batman for me, it has never really worked out. It is part of the reason why I never read the comics for the most part, because I didn't really like their take on it so much. I kind of wanted a darker Batman, and when Nolan finally stepped up to the plate and did a darker Batman, I thought that was pretty awesome. So I hope you guys actually enjoyed it. Maybe. So this last week, I've been thinking about some features as well, about some things that I would want to talk about, specifically having to do with things that are going on in the industry or just different things in general, really. And so I came up with two sort of points, two things that I wanted to speak on. The first is crowdsourcing creativity and what that means for the industry as a whole. It's been affecting. I don't know if you guys have been following a lot of it in the last couple weeks, months, years. Sort of the progression of how the internet is actually going towards, and the way that artists are actually using it to technically make their music or their movies or their articles or what have you. In the writing industry, we actually deal with similar subjects as well, where we get feedback constantly from people because of the nature of the way that websites are now. Everything is driven on comments. I mean, the internet's gone that way for over the last couple years, but especially in the last, like, let's say 2 years, it's sort of changed enough to the point where artists, etc., are taking it to their writers, what have you. Take any industry, really. They're all taking it really to a point where they're now listening to it and taking that feedback and actually incorporating it into their material a little bit more. You could say this is maybe good for everything because of the fact that it helps support and change and make things better over time, because you actually want feedback, you want reviews, etc. You want people commenting on your stuff because you kind of want to self-improve yourself. It's part of the thing that you want to do over time, obviously, as an artist or as a writer. You want to continuously be able to improve yourself, and that's understandable. But the biggest question that comes up when discussing this topic is, does that make creativity or like the art form, does that demean it because of the fact that you're constantly having to sit there and think about what do my fans think? I mean, people originally, especially artists, didn't really care what people thought about their art. They did it because it was because of the art and form. It was because of the art form, not because of the fact that Joe Blow thinks this type of weird art is awesome. The same thing goes with writing. I mean, you generally start out with writing, as far as journalistically, in a lot of ways. You start out off because you're investigating something and you want to uncover like truth or factual information and maybe leave bias behind, but at the same time you're driven by commenters who obviously understand that and, well, I should say also an industry that feeds on commenters. So without them sitting there and thinking ahead of time, well, what's going to generate the most comments, you get in this little discussion and this little quandary, especially with writing, that you then have to cater to something that you want to basically drive comments to the site, obviously, and something dry and bland and factual is less entertaining and also gets people to come to the site less than and comment less, and people who are angry, because you're technically wanting to either really make people angry or you're trying to instill some sort of passion in your article to get people to come in either way. Because if you make somebody angry, it's more likely, if you're making an audience angry, it's more likely that you're going to get more comments, you're going to get more traffic, people are going to start talking about it, they're going to share it to their friends, and then this snowball is going to go on and on and on and on. So that creativity and crowdsourcing obviously applies to everything, because again, it starts to shape the way that you think, the way that you try to approach your articles. And some you would think that obviously journalists would try to take that and in stride and just say, hey, screw them, I don't care what they think, I'm just going to report the facts, and that's going to be it, and let people decide for what they want this to say. And and especially with the other art backgrounds like music, and especially like Dead Mouse uses this example specifically that he basically had some kid talk to him, wanted to do a voiceover for his track, did it, sent it off to Dead Mouse, and then he used it and published it as a track. But that wasn't really his creation, technically. I mean, it was his, obviously, beats behind it and the sort of flair that he put on the touches for it. But the real sort of subject matter and creativity that actually came into that actually was from other people that he basically lifted with, obviously their permission. But he did lift it and then take it and move it into it. Now, you could say that, that maybe makes for a better product, like I said before. And then it also, means that there's a little bit more interaction that's always good for a public standpoint. But again, if you're trying to do art, again, or music, you kind of hope that it stands the test of time, not what's popular right then. And obviously a lot of people and a lot of commenters and people who are, the viewers, the readers, the listeners, are more likely to want the stuff that is currently, hot now, not something that is going to stand the test of time. It's something that is really popular because, again, it's a populist sort of argument to say that, we're all about the now, really, when it comes to people who are just random consumers of content. Because an artist thinks it's in a completely different mindset, or a music maker or a writer typically thinks or should think in a different context than, let's say, just a random consumer of content, or a fan, or somebody who likes somebody's work. And to be honest, I don't really know what this means or where I'm technically going with it, but it's an interesting subject just to think about as far as, what we are doing as consumers and commenters, on these public forums, on these public boards. And just know that, obviously your voice means more now than it ever has, really, on the internet. But then at the same time, the people who don't interact obviously are being discounted because of the fact that they obviously don't want to take part. They're not going to follow Twitter. They're not going to sit there and talk to the person. But then seeing all these changes that the person's making, that obviously are shifting their viewpoints based on, the interaction that they have on their public, facing sites. And whether that's better for society as a whole long term, or better for let's say, the genre that they're in, or whatever they're doing at the time, the art form, the writing, etc., is, I think, up for debate. Because from what we've seen as of late, especially in certain industries that have been, gearing themselves to comments, public interaction a lot more, have actually been not really doing all that well because of it. I mean, people have, commented that, you hate something, you're going to share it more. You're going to actually basically proselytize it more. There's that joke that any advertising, any negative advertising is good advertising because, ultimately it ends up giving you more people to actually serve to. Because it gets your name out there, it gets your name recognition, etc. So when they go to, let's say, this whole Chick-fil-A incident that's happened as of recently, which no matter which way that you sort of stand on it, I don't care. Again, I don't care about political discussions, but whichever way you stand on it, you can look on it and say, hey, Chick-fil-A is not really across the country, and you just gave them national advertising. Regardless of where you stand on the line, you literally just gave them this massive advertising campaign. And at the same time, it worked out to be better for the news programs, the people who would pay attention to that stuff, because it created this huge story out of nothing. Well, it's not out of nothing. It's fair point. It's not out of nothing. Again, I'm a person, I'm not going to get on politics, but I'm a libertarian. So there you go. Go from there as you want. But it's weird to think, and that basically means that both sides hate me, is basically what I'm saying there. Because really liberal on some things, really conservative and on some other things. So yeah, it's a terrible issue. It's, you know, it obviously shouldn't have been said and shouldn't have been done. But what, at the end of the day, you know, the news programs and the people who reported the story, you know, ended up getting a lot more traffic out of it based on the fact that they reported this story. You know, the people could have disregarded it and just, you know, chosen to boycott it on their own, you know, after seeing it, you know, somewhere else. But instead it becomes this huge national story. You know, people start, you know, making a huge deal about it, and then it goes national all the way to the point where, you know, people now are, you know, supporting it either way. You know, they're like, you know, you're getting a huge influx of supporters that are coming into Chick-fil-A, you know, now that are supporting them as well, who are eating it, you know, and don't really care. And then on the other side, you know, they're making this massive boycotts, and we've already sort of proven, I think, with time that boycotts don't work. They really don't. I mean, if you have to look at it objectively, if you can name me one boycott that's actually worked, then feel free. But, you know, it ultimately what ends up happening is still Chick-fil-A gets a huge advertising boost for a chain that's not really even totally national. They get a national ad campaign basically free from the news corporations and news publishers of content. Okay. All right. It's great that they did that. I don't really know if that's a good thing, personally. I actually think that, you know, maybe that, you know, for the people who really, you know, were adamant campaigning against Chick-fil-A, it might have actually backfired because of the fact, again, that it basically just served as a massive ad campaign for Chick-fil-A. I don't know. And how that has to do with anything as far as crowdsourcing creativity, partially. I'll admit it's tangential, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, in the rest of the industries out there, people are obviously trying to crowdsource their creativity, and it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how that actually ends up shaking out overall for all of the industries as a whole. Because as it is right now, people are becoming a little bit more adoptive and okay as far as companies are concerned, and publishers, developers, etc. are taking that a little bit more to heart now, and they're essentially making their games for high reviews, for high Metacritic scores, for high user reviews, not so much really taking in the sort of passion and drive to make a game that is fun and interesting to the people who are creating it. And they think that, you know, it's going to be fun for those that, you know, are going to experience it, that are like them. Not so much creating it for the masses, but creating it for people who are like them. And so, you know, that's definitely something that an indie game section of the games industry can sort of support and help out. And again, Indie Game Movie actually talks a little bit about this as well. There's an indie game documentary, which again, I wholeheartedly suggest that you guys go out and check out. Indie Game, the movie, it's called. It's awesome. Kind of talks a little bit about this, about the homogenization of art and creativity currently happening because of the fact of, you know, crowdsourcing and etc., and trying to get those massive Metacritic scores and etc. There was actually recently a story about Irrational Games. I believe it was Irrational Games. Could be wrong. That they had actually a requirement that you had to actually ship a AAA title with an 85% Metacritic score, like an over an 85 Metacritic score, and that anybody, you know, lower than that should, you know, is going to be disregarded. You start to think about if that's actually a good thing or a terrible thing, and I think the answer is kind of obvious. But, you know, again, maybe not. But let me know what you think. Where you stand on this issue. Let me know what you actually feel on this issue, because again, it's kind of subjective again, because it's like we still haven't yet known how big of an issue this will impact, you know, gaming, media, creativity, art over the next couple of years. But I think it affects every single industry right now that I think without it like sort of collapsing on itself, if it continues on the pace that it's at, it's only going to get worse, because as more people come online, they discover their voice, they start commenting on all these sites, they start, you know, the internet becomes a bigger and bigger resource, and eventually, you know, will impact the way that, you know, people actually view content, people actually create content, you know, for every single medium. So, you know, it's one of those things, when I started thinking about it this last week, you know, sort of caught me off guard, and, you know, I was like, man, like, you can sort of apply this thing to like so many other areas and start thinking about, you know, why it is that we're at this point right now in where people will agree that, you know, the Modern Warfare series or X, you know, series or whatever that you like is bland, you know, it's trimmed down, etc. I'm just relaying some of the comments that people, you know, talk about. But then at the same time, you look at the Metacritic scores, are obviously massive scores, so a lot of people enjoy them. But, you know, those other games that are being done for art form's sake, you know, whether you think games are an art or not, is being left behind quickly. They're being like phased out of existence. I mean, in some ways, the indie game scene is bigger than it ever has been, but you can't have a sustainable industry, you know, on the backs of people like Jonathan Blow and you know, Phil Fish. You can't have like 7+ year development cycles for an indie game. Like, that just doesn't produce games on a level that will be all that important for a long term. Obviously, they'll be in really important pieces. Yes, that's great. And maybe part of the thing is that games should take a long development cycle, and we've seen that over the last couple, you know, years upon years, that there are so many out there currently that just want, you know, to produce games in a 2-year life cycle or less, and that stuff doesn't really work out very well. And it's been proven time and time again that, you know, what ends up happening out is that, you know, people start get these massive teams that get created for the sole purpose of producing a game as quickly as they can, and then once the game gets published, they're, you know, quickly expelled from the company, to put it lightly, and then they just go on and do the next game over and over and over again. You know, that's for a lot of factors. I don't want to simplify it to that point, but, you know, it's really weird. We're obviously in a transition period where if we don't figure out what this means, could affect, like, you know, indie games, could affect, you know, what we like in our industry, and strip out a lot of the fun, the creativity of a lot of these games. We could maybe end up seeing just brown shooters forever and ever and ever and ever. I don't know, but it seems pretty scary to me personally. You know, it's where we stand. Again, I don't know. I really don't know anymore. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary to think about. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Obviously, I've belabored this point now, so let me know. Also, some things about the second sort of thing that I wanted to talk about real briefly. Expectations and finding your niche in fansite form. A couple people have been asking me this for quite some time, like how we started Darth Vader originally, and, you know, how I would sort of give people advice going forward if they wanted to create their own fan sites, wanted to do what we did and have been doing for quite some time. And I think the first couple things that I would say are pretty simple ones and mostly common sense. And it's just, you know, I think the most important thing, obviously, is to have drive to do it, because that's the most important thing out of the bunch. Secondly would be to find your niche. And that means, you know, obviously finding something that no one else is doing and do that as frequently as possible. Whether it's content or anything else, you know, do something that's different from the pack. Because if you don't make yourself different from everybody else, what's going to end up happening is that you saw this fan sites out there that used to do and have been doing recently, and still do for a fair amount, just doing news forever is not going to work out in the long run. And even if you write the best articles on the news, it's still not going to help you out. So what you're going to need, obviously, is some content that makes you different. And that can be different things like what we did with dissections, like things like that, guides, etc. Do something different that makes people want to come to your site. So doing those two things, I think, would bring you a close way to getting there. And then on top of that, I think another thing, obviously, would be to attend all the events that you possibly can, because getting your name out there and getting, being interactive with the devs will get you some, inside knowledge, obviously, for interviews, etc., things coming up, all that stuff. I think out of the things that we spent money on, through our time, getting to these events was, I think, by far one of the biggest things we could have done, and solidified us, because we continuously had the best coverage coming out, or we try to produce the best coverage coming out of these events, and continuously went to them and were dependable at attending these events. So we became a de facto source, or one of the biggest sources on the net for these events. If you wanted to find out more information about what these developers talked about at these conventions, you kind of had to come to us and find out more. So those three things, I think, are the biggest things, and everything else can sort of go from there. But remembering those three things, I think, will be a big sort of help. And then beyond that, I think you can kind of figure everything else out. But if you don't have the drive, and if you don't have the staying power to stay around for 2+ years, essentially without making any money, in fact, losing a large chunk of your own money, your own personal money, because again, you're having to go through this, writing it off, all that stuff, and normal business startup sort of stuff, then you're not going to make it, because there's just not going to be enough passion there to do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean spending all your time on it, but to get to that point. But you definitely will have to put a lot of time into it, enough to the point where you have enough content built up on a weekly basis to push you over the edge and make you different from the rest of the pack. So, but don't sit there and think that you can just make a news site and that's all you do. You got to do more than that, and it's got to show the fans and then the people who are visiting you, the viewers, that you're going to be dependable, and you're going to be bringing something different to the table than all the rest of the other blogs on WordPress that cover the news. So yeah, that was what we did, and it helped, and it worked for us. So that's what I recommend everybody else do. As far as Live Pixel, we're just trugging along, and we're hoping that we'll be doing a lot of different things that people like. And with that, we hope you guys enjoyed the look at this weekend stuff. I'll be doing another one of these next week, so we hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, I'm Justin Lowe, and we'll see you guys here next week. Bye bye.